What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and welcome to another episode of our First Down Training show. Today, what we're going to be talking about is how I got into coaching at 18 years old and some of the lessons I learned as a young football coach that I could apply to you guys today. Then we're going to be getting into some current events. We're going to be talking about some advice that Justin Jefferson gave to some young wide receivers in a recent video that surfaced online. And then we're going to be talking about Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers, as well as answering some questions that you guys left on a previous episode. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's get started. So I got into coaching at an extremely young age, and I started out like most trainers would, most regular coaches would, at a local high school to where I lived. And the high school that I coached at was Los Alamitos High School. I was the varsity wide receivers coach at 18 years old. Now, there were some guys on the team that were 18 years old. There were some guys on the team that had been held back and were turning 19 even before I was turning 19. So there were a lot of challenges that went along the way with that, but it made me pretty much into the coach that I am today, and I learned a ton at a very young age, which obviously helped me into my coaching career with like training, with doing our camps, and that's what I ultimately want to share with you today. So how I really got started was I was kind of at like a weird spot in my life in terms of the game of football. Like I remember working so hard as a high school athlete. Like I'm talking the hardest that I've probably ever worked in my entire life to try to get a scholarship offer, right? I wasn't one of those guys that like, hey, I need to go D1. Hey, I want to go to the NFL. Like I obviously had hopes and dreams of that, like many young athletes do. But you know, I was realistic. I kind of looked at my size, I kind of looked at my skills, and I'm like, listen, man, if I could just get a scholarship to where my parents don't have to pay for college, that was my ultimate goal. And I was actually able to achieve that, right? Now, I went to a small Division III college called Whittier College. And, after my first year there, I was kind of like, I just felt like there was nothing left for me. I felt like I had achieved the goal. I felt like from Division III, there wasn't much for me to go. And I'm not knocking anybody that plays Division III. If you have dreams of going D3, transferring to a bigger school, like that's absolutely possible. The transfer portal really wasn't a thing back when I was in, college. But I just felt like I didn't really have any goals. I was kind of lost. And one day I went to the high school that I used to play at, and I was just lifting in the gym. They were kind enough to still let me use the weight room, and I was lifting out there, and our offensive coordinator, or I think it was the quarterback coach at the time, and our head coach went in there to work out. And I was just like, talking with them, and they're like, hey, what's your plan? Like, you're still playing? Like, what do you want to do? Like, what are you majoring in? I'm like, yeah, I really don't know. And they were like, how would you like to coach here? Just kind of random, and I thought it was a little weird asking, like an 18-year-old kid to help out and coach. But, that kind of showed what they saw in me as a leader. And I was just recently on the team, and, I had a lot of good relationships with the coaching staff. Didn't always start out that way, but I felt like I was able to earn their respect with the work that I put in, the advancements that I made in my game. And they were like, yeah, we want you to come out and help coach. And so I actually was a safeties coach first. So they wanted me to coach defense, and I knew nothing about defense. And so I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, it's a new challenge. I have an understanding of the defensive side of the game from playing quarterback in high school. And so I was the safeties coach. Now I was the safeties coach for about a week because we had a receiver coach who really wasn't getting the job done. And they were like, hey, Grant, what do you think about moving to receivers? And I was like, yes, I'm all for it. I hate defense. No offense if anybody's a defensive guy watching this, but I love offense. And I was like, yeah, great. Like, let me coach receivers, whatever. And, there were a lot of, that's kind of how I got into it. It was a very, very lucky move. I think if you're a coach and you're a young guy and you want to be a football coach, that's probably not the path that most people will have. I think most people will have to start at a lower level. They're going to have to start at freshman ball, JV ball, etc. They're not going to necessarily get a varsity job right out of high school. But if I were to do it, that way, I would just honestly volunteer at a local school, become a coach on the freshman level, and try to work my way up. Now, how do you work your way up? We're going to talk about that and how I was able to kind of have a lot of success. I was specifically the outside wide receivers coach, and both of my outside wide receivers were both D1 guys and got D1 scholarships. One went to Washington, and then the other one went to, I believe, like Colorado State Pueblo, I want to say, which is a D1 FCS school. He's a little bit smaller than the other guy, but we had a lot of success, right? And so I remember some of the biggest challenges being that young of a football coach was people looking at me, and I even still get this to this day, to be honest with you. It doesn't bother me as much, but people kind of looking at me and going like, man, well, what do you know? Like, well, why should I listen to you? You're only 18, you're young, etc. And that's a fair critique, and I hadn't really accomplished anything in the coaching world, but, I had a great coaching staff around me that I guess you could say believed in me and believed what I was teaching. But I think that's kind of where the whole idea of First Down Training started, where the whole mindset behind First Down Training started, and what we do with our content, and that's just explaining the reason why. Showing you results, or let's say this, an athlete makes a mistake, showing them why they made the mistake, how they can correct it, athletes seeing results, and that's how you ultimately get them to buy in. I was never one of those young coaches that went in there and was just like, hey, listen to me because I said so. Hey, I played high school football and I played a little bit of college football. Like, listen to me because I said so. I was never that guy. I always wanted to show the players the reason why so they would actually trust me. I wanted to develop trust by the work that I put in as a coach. And if you're a young coach watching this, or maybe you want to get into coaching, or you're just looking for a different perspective, maybe you're a player and you want to kind of get that, let's say you're an underclassman, right? Let's say you're a quarterback, you're in a leadership role, and you want to get your offense to rally around you. You have to teach them why. You cannot lead from a place when you don't have any experience. And sometimes leaders are thrust into a position where they don't have any experience. But you can't lead without any experience from a just do it because I said so attitude. And a lot of coaches on the staff that were older than me had that attitude. Guys that have been coaching football for 20, 25 years, but they weren't necessarily the most talented football players, but they were better coaches than what they were players. But they would just tell their guys, hey, do this, what are you doing, come on, and players would hate that. And since I was a player not that long ago, I never wanted to go that route. So the biggest challenges was probably the lack of respect that players had for me, and I probably wouldn't respect myself either. But the way that I went about it, like I told you, was let me explain to you the reason why, let me show you results, and then buy into what I'm teaching. And I remember every single rep, I wanted my players to see me working just as hard as them. Obviously not from a physical sense, but from a coaching sense. So if they made a good play, I was in their ear telling them what a great job they did. They made a bad play, I was like, hey man, you did this really well, but you need to improve in this area. And this is why you need to do it this way. So try it this next way on this play. And I would tell them all the time, like, hey, if it doesn't work, then we could try it a different way. But if it works, like, you got to listen to what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure it will work. And that came from studying the position, having knowledge of the game. But you could have a lot of knowledge. It's just, are people going to listen to what you're saying? Do you have credibility? And you develop that credibility by being right over and over again and showing your players that you actually care and that you're actually going to put in as much effort as they did. So that was kind of the biggest things those are some of the biggest challenges, right? Now, as far as what I learned from being a young coach was I learned that players are going to always question you. And as a coach, you need to be able to answer those questions. So I'll give you a perfect example, right? I stopped coaching at that school. I was only there for a year. We're going to talk about why I stopped in a second. But I think one of the biggest things for me was, I took that over into my training. So I remember the first video that I posted when I was, doing social media was a video of teaching quarterbacks how to throw on the run, right? And it was like, hey, you're gonna roll right, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And I remember the first comment, this was the first comment I ever got on social media was, what the hell does this guy know? This guy's full of it, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And so I was like, damn, maybe this isn't for me, right? But I looked at that and I was like, okay, maybe I'm going about this the wrong way as a coach. The video was too instructional. It was just, hey, do this. Not do this because. Not here's the reason why you need to do this. Not this is what you need to do because of. That's what I need to segue into as far as training goes. And that was the foundation for all of our content. So what we started doing was we started posting videos with, a side-by-side of an NFL example. So we had an NFL example of somebody doing something. I was explaining a video. I gave them a drill. And that's how people got to buy in a little bit more because they're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. He's communicating that message well. Now he's backing it up with being able to showcase NFL players doing it. Maybe I go try it. Then they get results and then they repeat the process, and that's how you kind of build that trust. So I say this as advice for maybe young coaches or any type of coach watching this is that kids are always going to challenge you. Kids are a lot smarter than people think these days. So they're always going to have questions and you need to be able to answer those questions as a coach. Now, I get this question all the time. Why don't I coach for a team anymore? Why am I not coaching? Do you coach a team? Things like that. And sometimes people discredit me for that. They'll say, well, you don't even coach a team. I stopped coaching that team because there was, kind of an incident that happened one day. Our head coach came into the coach's office, got pissed off, and he got a gallon water jug and punted the water jug in the coach's office and went right over the coach's heads, hit this glass picture, glass went everywhere, and then just walked off and left. The next day we show up, he didn't even mention it, didn't even apologize. And it's not that I need an apology for something like that. It would have been nice to hear, it didn't hit me, but at the same time, it's I don't want to be in that type of environment. And I felt like we were leaning more so towards lack of developing kids, lack of developing young men, and just focusing on the starters, focusing on the best players, kind of letting the inmates run the asylum type deal. So I wanted to step away from that world, and I wanted to do things my way, and I wanted to work with athletes my way, because I felt that if I took what I learned from that short amount of time that I was coaching sports and tried to do that on a bigger scale, using social media, using the platform that we have, I felt that we can make a bigger impact on athletes, and I feel like we're working that out every single day. So that's kind of my story. That's how I got into coaching at 18 years old. If you're a young coach and you know you're concerned about it, you're worried about people listening to you, trust me, just come from a place of truly loving your players, truly wanting them to get better, wanting them to improve, show them how hard you're working as a coach, and show them the reason why. Show them the results, and trust me, they will start to buy into what you're saying. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, fellas, before we get into some current events, if you are a quarterback or wide receiver watching this and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we're traveling out to 3 more cities across the entire U.S. for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So guys, if you go to that very first link in the description below, that's where you can sign up. Our next camp is going to be in Columbus, Ohio. Then we'll be in Boise, Idaho, and then we'll be finishing off our camp tour in Los Angeles, California. So guys, very first link in that description below, our Columbus camp and LA camp are completely sold out, and we only have 3 more spots left in our Boise camp. But if you're in Columbus or LA, just go to that link in the description below, and there's an email on there, and we could potentially add you to a wait list or open up a spot for you if we have availability in a position group. So guys, very first link in that description below. Let's get to some Q&A, okay? Or let's get to some current events. So guys, current events, let's see. We got number 1, Aaron Rodgers to Steelers creates this rare pairing that the NFL hasn't seen in 32 years. So they're talking about the pairing of him and Mike Tomlin in that article, but at the same time, Aaron Rodgers, like, guys, I'm so fired up about this, because I don't know if you guys watched that. You know, Aaron Rodgers is a little out there. Like, you know, regardless of what you think about him politically, regardless of what you think about, like, you know, his off-season, you know, drug use, let's just call it that. It is what it is. He's a little out there, but when you look at that guy, I watched that Netflix documentary about Aaron Rodgers, and he, like, just his competitive temperament, his obsessiveness over the game, his motivation towards the game, the love that that guy has for football. Like, I think he wasn't in the greatest situation in New York, and I think in Pittsburgh, they have the tools to make a serious playoff run. So I am pumped to see it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, guys. I think Aaron Rodgers is the best person to ever throw a football ever. I put him above anybody. Not saying he's the greatest quarterback of all time, but the best thrower of the football. And I think he's got great weapons. They got DK Metcalf. They have a great offense. He's got a great coach, and I think he's in a great system. So I'm pumped to see what Aaron Rodgers does. That's huge news. We covered that on a previous episode of this show. Now, current event number 2. Powerful Vikings superstar wide receiver Justin Jefferson gives young wide receivers important advice on how to succeed at the next level. We don't need y'all to go 100 miles per hour. Who's the fastest Hall of Famer? We don't effing know. It doesn't matter. So I like this advice from Justin Jefferson. This is something that I always preach to my wide receivers. I always preach to them that, like, you know, what I'll tell them is, whenever you're running routes, what it's about is control and frequency. So if you're running a route, like let's say you're running a 15-yard comeback, from the start of the route all the way up till 15 yards, it's not about going 100 miles an hour. Because if you're going 100 miles an hour and then you put the brakes on, you're not going to be balanced at the top of the brake. What you need to be able to do is maintain the same exact speed. You should be going 90 to 95%. Look at a guy like Tyreek Hill. That dude ain't running full speed when he runs routes, because it's about setting up the route. It's about being able to create separation. We don't need this insane amount of speed going into it. Does speed help? Yes, speed helps when you got the ball in your hands. Speed helps when you're running a fade. But when you're running routes, when it comes to route running, it's not about going full speed, and it's not about being the fastest guy on the field. So for those of you wide receivers that maybe aren't the fastest, maybe aren't the fastest on your team, fastest in your league, whatever, you can still run great routes. You can still be a great wide receiver, and you hear it from one of the best wide receivers in the game right there. So I think that's great advice for all young wide receivers, okay? Now, next question, or now what we're going to do, fellas, is we're going to get into some questions that you guys have left on a previous episode of this show. So what we were doing is, it's like, if you guys got questions, stuff that you want to ask me, whatever it is, guys, post those in the comment section below. I read and respond to every single one of your comments, and the best comments that I feel would give people the most value, I feature them on episodes of our show. So again, guys, post your questions in the comment section below. Let's get right into the first one. So first one here from Better Dash Dash. Hey coach, I'm an incoming freshman running back, currently about 5'5", 135 pounds. I've got good speed and always give 100% effort mentally throughout the game. However, I've noticed that my physical endurance tends to drop off a bit by the fourth quarter. My body starts to slow down even though I'm still locked locked in mentally. I'm not sure if that's something I should be concerned about yet. I would definitely want to improve. Would you recommend focusing more on building quick energy and strength, or should I prioritize long endurance training to stay consistent for all fourth quarters? Thanks for your time and God bless. Yeah, no problem, man. So what I will say, when it comes to football conditioning, running distance is not for you. Running sprints is what you need to be focused on, because that's how the game of football is played. Football is not a continuous jog. We're not running miles at a time. What we're doing is we're a snap of the ball, we're trying to exert all out energy and all out force, then we rest, and then we do it again. That's how you need to train. So if you're gassing out in the fourth quarter, I just feel like you're not doing enough of short burst endurance training, so your body's not getting accustomed to that over a long period of time. So what you need to do, I would say, is 2 to 3 times a week. If you just go out to the field and run 10 40-yard sprints, 40 as hard as you can, rest for 30 seconds, 40 as hard as you can again. At any position, that will get you in better football shape. So appreciate you asking that, man. Hope that was able to help. Next question from JGLF6V. Hey coach, I just got a leather football and I need some cheap ways to break it in. Also, is throwing my football at turf going to break in the football? So if you're looking for cheap ways to break in a football, what you want to do, there are a couple things you could do. One, you get the football and you get ankle tape spray and you spray the football with ankle tape spray, and that can kind of add a layer of stickiness to it. Another thing you could do is, if it's a brand new football where it's like kind of like slippery and almost feels plastic, go out to a grass field where there's like dew on the ground and just start skidding the ball across the dew. That's a great way to break it in as well. And then obviously getting some type of Wilson tack bar where you could rub it on the football, and getting the brush to get the dirt off the ball or the extra stickiness off the ball is great too. But I would say the cheapest is throwing the ball at wet, dewy grass. So hope that makes sense, man. Thank you for asking that. Now, next question here from Mawana Tabit 4653. I'm starting football back up again this summer. I played lineman last year, but have grown to about 5'9" and 135. I was 155 last year and proud of my journey. I would like to play tight end, but my team needs a QB I used to play. It's in 8th grade too. I'm very smart and could do it because I've become a lot quicker. I'm struggling with more throw power and keeping a tight spiral. It's quite wobbly and spirals sideways. Do you have any tips to improve my throwing technique? So when it comes to arm strength and a spiral for a quarterback, arm strength comes from a lot of things mechanically that you need to do. There are a million things mechanically that can tie into your arm strength, but to improve those mechanical aspects, work on your core strength and your leg strength. If you have strong legs and you have a strong core, you'll be able to produce more ground force and rotational force, which will help with distance on your throws. Now for a spiral, there are 2 things you could focus on. One, have a gap between your palm and the football. So you don't want to put your palm all over the ball, because sometimes that can cause your wrist to break and you curve the ball. Then also apply more pressure to the football with your index finger. What that can do is help that be the last finger to touch the ball, and you could flick it better off of your hands. So that's what I would say for arm strength and for a better spiral. Hope that's able to help out too. All right, fellas, thank you for tuning in, you guys. Hope this was able to help. Hope you guys got some value out of this episode, but we'll be back for another episode. But again, guys, if you have questions, comments, post them in the comment section below. Happy to answer all those and feature you on our next episode of our show. So again, guys, appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.